You cannot believe what I'm seeing.
Programs on MPT are made possible by our members and the following.
Since 1865, the Maryland State Education Association has supported public education, school funding, small class sizes, and our students. Visit MarylandEducators.org and join us in standing up for strong public schools.
From the studios of Maryland Public Television, this is Commitment 2014, the Gubernatorial Debate. Moderator for tonight's debate, Jason Newton.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I am honored to serve as your moderator for the debate between Maryland gubernatorial candidates Democrat Anthony Brown and Republican Larry Hogan. For our candidates, tonight's debate is one final opportunity to speak directly to you, the voters, and make their case for leading our state. Now, there's something special about tonight's program. It is a statewide debate in every measure of the word. It's being seen in every county, thanks to our partners at Maryland Public Television, as well as being broadcast on WBAL-TV, WBOC-TV, and WHAG-TV. It is also being aired in its entirety on WBAL-AM. But it's not just the reach of the program, it's the issues. Tonight, the candidates will be questioned by panelists from 3 TV stations representing 3 diverse geographic areas of our state, the Metros, the Shore, and Western Maryland. Questions will be regional and statewide in scope, making sure that no issue is off the table. Now, to introduce our panelists. First, my colleague from WBAL-TV, Deborah Weiner. Also, Steve Hammond from WBOC. And from WHAG, Jeff Bowers. So regardless if you call Wicomico or Garrett County home, this debate has you covered. As for the format, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question posed by our panelists. There will be a 30-second rebuttal and a 30-second response. And not every question will automatically have a rebuttal. As moderator, I'll work to keep the debate moving, but will not interrupt respectful political debate for the sake of a stopwatch. So let's begin. Each candidate will have an opening and closing statement of a minute. During a coin flip, it was determined that Mr. Hogan would address the voters first. Mr. Hogan, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much for having us tonight. Folks, I'm not a professional politician. I'm just a small businessman and a lifelong Marylander who loves this state. And I'm concerned that our state is way off track and heading in the wrong direction. Rather than just sit back and accept the status quo, I decided to stand up and to try to do something about it. I've been traveling all across our state, and I've had the opportunity to listen to Marylanders from all walks of life. And the common theme I keep hearing is frustration. The average Marylander is really tired of partisanship and professional politicians who don't seem to ever solve the problems. And they're looking for new leadership that will bring real, common sense, bipartisan solutions to the serious problems that face us. As governor, that's exactly what I intend to do.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Governor, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. I want to thank the viewing audience, both in the studio and at home. I'm running for governor because, like you, I believe that Maryland's a great state. The work we've done together to drive crime down to levels we haven't seen in 4 decades. We've built some of the best schools in the nation, and we lead the nation in college affordability. We're only one of 6 states that have come through the Great Recession with a AAA bond rating, which enables to invest right here in Maryland. But this election isn't about the past and where we've been. This election, for sure, is about the future, what's next, and the opportunities we create for more and more Marylanders. For 30 years, I've had an opportunity to lead soldiers, train them, care for them and their families, been on a lot of important missions in service to our country. Today, I'm on a different mission. The fight is different, but just as important for Maryland families. Because come this November, on November 4th, Marylanders are going to wake up and go to the polls. And there's a real choice. Are we going to wake up every day fighting for Maryland's working families and middle-class values? Or do we go back to a day when we favor large corporations, wealthy corporations that need the help the least? I'm going to wake up every day with Ken Ullman and Marylanders fighting for working families and middle-class values.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Now, it was determined that Lieutenant Governor Brown will have the first question, and it will be asked by WBAL's Deborah Weiner. Now, after that, the questions will alternate between the candidates to who answers first. BOC, then HAG will follow WBAL with their questions. So we'll start and get right into the issues. Deborah, you're up first.
Jason, thank you. When it comes to education, it's like there are two Marylands, with wonderful headlines about kids who do well and horrible headlines about the kids who do poorly, oftentimes in urban areas like Baltimore, which is heavily financed by the state. You've both acknowledged the achievement gap. What are you going to do about it, and how are you going to pay for it?
Sure. I think I envision a Maryland where every child, regardless of where your family lives or where they're from, has access to a world-class education. We have some of the best schools in the country, but our work continues until every child has an outstanding education right here in Maryland. And that's why I support universal voluntary pre-K. Whether you ask a college president or a kindergarten teacher, what can we do to improve educational outcomes? They point to pre-K education. That's why I've put forward a proposal, and not only a proposal, but this year we've already begun to implement pre-K in Maryland. That's where Mr. Hogan and I fundamentally disagree. Mr. Hogan says that we can't afford pre-K, yet he's willing to give a tax break to the largest corporations. That's not right.
Mr. Hogan.
Well, first of all, we do have some of the most wonderful schools in the country right here in Maryland, and we should be proud of that. If you happen to be lucky enough to grow up in Montgomery County or in Howard County or a couple of other areas, if you grew up in a wealthy neighborhood, you do get a world-class education. But unfortunately, the gap between our best schools and our worst schools is one of the worst in the entire country, and it's growing even wider over the past 8 years. The gap between white students and minority students has grown wider as well and is also one of the worst in the country. I agree with the Lieutenant Governor that we want a world-class education for every single child in Maryland. And we haven't been able to do that for the past 8 years. We've tried, but we haven't really made a whole lot of success. I think there are a number of things we can do. It's not just money. We've doubled spending on education. We're now spending $6 billion, and that happened during both the Ehrlich administration and the O'Malley-Brown administration. But it hasn't solved the problem. One of the things that I want to try to do is to bring better schools to the neighborhoods that don't have better schools. And I've been a big proponent of charter schools. When I was serving as a cabinet secretary in the Ehrlich administration, we passed the first charter school legislation here in Maryland. It was watered down by the legislature, and then the O'Malley-Brown administration failed to implement it, so that we're now 50th in the nation in charter schools, but it's had wonderful success in many places around the rest of the country, and it's something I would push very hard to accomplish.
We're going to jump in here after the minute. Lieutenant Governor, would you like to jump in, or should we move on?
Sure. Just to set the record straight, Maryland leads the nation when it comes to reducing the achievement gap by income. We're making considerable progress in reducing the achievement gap by race and ethnicity. And when you look at students of color, they're leading the country. They're ranked either number 2 or 4 in 4th grade and 8th grade reading and English. So we're making progress, but yes, we have more work to do. So it's not only pre-K, but also in the proposal that I've laid out, and we can do it within existing resources, more school-based health clinics. Also, feeding children in school, because no matter how good a teacher is in the front of the classroom, if a student has their stomach talk to them because they're hungry, they're not going to be able to focus on that quality education that we're delivering. So there are a number of factors that go into achievement, to close an achievement gap, to build on the progress that we're making.
Sure, and sir, you have 30 if you want it.
Well, let me just address the comment that the Lieutenant Governor made, and he tends to make it a lot, and he says that I want to take away money from children and give it to the wealthiest of corporations in Maryland. It's just absolutely false, but he keeps repeating it over and over again. Here's the facts. When you increase the corporate tax rate to 8.25%, it drove most of the businesses out of the state, 8,688 of them. I thought it was a bad idea. And that's where he comes up with, I want to take money away from kids and give it to the richest of corporations. But in fact, under your administration, the New York Times says you gave $544 million to just a handful of the richest corporations in corporate giveaways, something I wouldn't do.
All right, we'll have to leave that issue there and we'll move on. Steve Hammond from WBOC.
Jason, thank you. Gentlemen, agriculture is a huge part of the Eastern Shore. Growers of both crops and chickens take a lot of pride in the steps that they've already taken to help clean up the Chesapeake Bay. But farmers say the regulations keep coming, the latest being the phosphorus management tool. Farmers say it's costly. Environmental groups say it's necessary to help the bay. Where do you stand on the PMT? Will your administration enact and enforce it?
Mr. Hogan, you're up first.
Well, thank you. It's a great question, and I've been very involved in this issue. First of all, I'm very happy to have the endorsement of the Maryland Farm Bureau. I've spent an awful lot of time on the shore with the poultry industry, with the grain industry. I've sat down with Jim Perdue, and I've talked with farmers all across our state, but particularly on the shore. I helped lead the fight against the phosphorus management tool when they came out with these regulations that were so burdensome and so onerous that it was really going to decimate the entire poultry industry and grain industry on the Eastern Shore. Look, we all agree that we need to do more to clean up our greatest treasure, the Chesapeake Bay. And phosphorus management is something that's very important. But when you don't bring all the stakeholders to the table to sit down and get their input, and you pass just onerous regulations that could devastate an entire region of the state and kill one of our biggest industries, that's when it's gone too far. And we have to find a balance. We got it stopped last summer, and they're continuing to work on it, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure we come up with real environmental protections that don't put entire regions of the state or industries out of business.
Lieutenant Governor.
Poultry industry is a very important industry in Maryland. It hires literally tens of thousands of Marylanders. I, too, have had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Perdue. I visited chicken farmers and even chicken farmers in Mr. Perdue, just like environmentalists, just like local government officials recognize that we have a responsibility to take a balanced approach to how we protect and preserve the environment. That's why over the last several years, and why today I stand in the tradition of Marylanders who understand we have to take a balanced approach. There's a requirement for farmers to reduce agricultural runoff. We'll work with them. The phosphorus management tools, we'll implement them provided that they're not going to drive the poultry industry out of business. The poultry industry is too important. But we also need to continue to upgrade our wastewater treatment plants. We need to continue working with local government to upgrade the stormwater management plants, reducing the impacts on the Chesapeake Bay. We've done a lot of good things with the agricultural community, like the manure transport program, like the cover crop program, and like putting more land into program open space. We can implement phosphorus management tools in a balanced way that does not drive poultry out of Maryland, and that's how we'll do it.
Gentlemen, I think we'll keep moving, or would you like to
Yeah,
have
I'd
your
like
30?
to address that if
Certainly.
I could. I mean, it sounds as if the Lieutenant Governor agrees with me, but here's the fact, Lieutenant Governor Brown. You and Martin O'Malley presided over these ridiculous phosphorus management tool regulations that we're talking about decimating the entire, and you say now you want balance. That's not what happened. I can tell you that a couple of weeks ago, I had an event in Cambridge. It was watermen and farmers for Hogan. Over 1,500 people showed up, and they are really hurting over there on the shore, and they're really angry about the regulations that you and the governor were trying to push through. So it's hard to say now you agree with me, but you're the ones that actually caused the problem.
Would you like your 30?
Listen, it's a balanced approach. And to explore and look at the phosphorus management tools, that's responsible stewardship of the environment. There's a reason why the phosphorus management tool has not gone forward. Right now, we're looking at the economic impact. Because as I stated, we're not going to implement the PMT if we're going to drive the poultry industry into extinction in Maryland. There are too many jobs that rely on that. We'll strike a balance, not just a balance in PMT, but a balance with all of the things that we do to protect the environment, whether it's PMT, whether it's stormwater runoff, whether it's wastewater treatment plants. It's a balanced approach. That's the tradition in Maryland, Larry.
Well, you didn't take a balanced approach, and it practically killed an entire industry, and I led the fight to try to stop it.
Gentlemen, we're going to keep moving. We'll head west to Jeff Bowers. He's with WHAG. How are you, Jeff?
Thank you. Among the states in the Marcellus Shale Formation, Maryland has been considerably more cautious when it comes to drilling and specifically the practice of hydraulic fracturing. Now, allowing this practice could generate considerable revenue and jobs in Western Maryland. If elected, do you see a time during your term in office when the state will allow this type of drilling?
Mr. Brown.
I think that the natural gas in the Marcellus Shale provides a tremendous economic opportunity for the state of Maryland. I mean, if we look at the last 10 years in this country, America has become an energy-generating, energy-producing nation, and Maryland ought to be part of it. However, I'm not going to support the development of natural gas in the Marcellus Shale unless it can be done without ruining or disturbing the rural legacy of Western Maryland, without putting both residents and workers at risk, and to make sure that we can receive the financial benefits to Marylanders and not to outside companies coming into Maryland. I believe that we can do it. That's why I supported the task force that did the environmental study, that did the health study, and is continuing to do right now an economic impact study. I believe that we can achieve a balance, develop the natural gas, and we can do it without disturbing the rural legacy and putting Marylanders at undue risk. If we can do that, that I'll support moving forward in developing natural gas in the Marcellus Shale in Maryland.
Mr. Hogan, you have 1 minute.
Well, we're sitting on an economic gold mine with the Marcellus Shale in western Maryland. Many of the states in our region up there with Pennsylvania and West Virginia are really taking advantage of it, and we haven't. During the O'Malley-Brown administration, they've been just kicking the can down the road and failing to make any real decisions. So I agree that we want to extract clean natural gas in an environmentally sensitive way, but I think that we've delayed making that decision for years and years. And we need to make the decision. You know, we I think have all the data that we need, and the only problem is we haven't been able to get a decision out of you and Governor O'Malley. It's something that I would try to bring to a head, make a decision, and move forward as quickly as we possibly can. I was in Oakland last weekend, up in Garrett County, and I can tell you, you know, the whole state is really hurting. They're really hurting economically all across the state with unemployment, but it's even worse in Western Maryland, the Eastern Shore. And they need jobs, and they really could use some economic help up there.
Lieutenant Governor, 30 seconds.
Let's just be clear. Today, there are no permits pending, no applications for permits pending to develop natural gas in the Marcellus Shale. So any suggestion that the responsible work we're doing today to study the economic effect, to study the health effects, to study the environmental impacts, it's not delaying anything because there are no permits pending. So we have time, so let's use it responsibly so that if we do move forward, we're doing it in a way that's healthy, that's safe, and that's economically beneficial to Marylanders.
Mr. Hogan.
The task forces have been delayed over and over again, year after year, and you've never moved forward with the decisions, and it's something we've got to move forward on.
All right. Deborah, back to you.
Lieutenant Governor, a lot of people see a Brown-Ullman administration as an extension of the O'Malley-Brown administration. Tell us specifically how you parted ways from Governor O'Malley in terms of policy and philosophy.
Thank you for the question. You know, I'm often asked that question as I travel across Maryland. How do you differ from Martin O'Malley? We're certainly different as people. I'm a first-generation American. I spent 30 years in active and reserve duty. And I cut my teeth in public service in the legislature. People ask, well, what's next for Maryland as we improve our schools, as we improve public safety in our neighborhoods? One area where Martin and O'Malley and I are different in terms of policy. In the O'Malley-Brown administration, we've got a number of strategic goals, and we're making progress on all of them in health care, in environment, in education, and employment. The first strategic goal of the Brown-Ullman administration will be to position Maryland to have the most competitive business climate in the nation. That'll be a Governor Brown strategic priority. There are a lot of things that Governor O'Malley has worked on and focused on to strengthen our business climate, but this will be the first time that we declare the strategic goal, and then we align all of our policy, our budget, and the administration of government to drive that strategic goal.
But specifically, how have you parted ways from the governor? Because you really didn't mention any.
So looking backwards, if you want to look backwards and look at the last 8 years, there are at least two areas where the governor and I have differed. But keep in mind that when the voters of Maryland elected a governor and a lieutenant governor, what they did not elect is a lieutenant governor who would question publicly the work of the governor. That doesn't provide for continuity in government. But I have disagreed with the governor. I've disagreed with him on the mortgage interest deduction that he proposed several sessions ago as we balanced our budget. It didn't pass in the General Assembly, and I think that's a good thing. I did not speak out publicly on that. I disagreed with the governor when he signed the bill that passed the tech tax in Maryland several years ago, and it was later repealed before it even went into effect. But I think it's important to understand that as a lieutenant governor, my role is not to walk out of the room with the governor where I have the privilege to advise and counsel him and then begin to undermine the decisions that he makes as he leads our state. And I think Mr. Hogan recognizes that as well, where he has differed with his governor, yet did not publicly challenge his governor when he was the appointment secretary.
Hey, Mr. Hogan, we'll give you a shot at this, but we'll change it. How will your administration
Well, I'd like to respond. He just had 2 minutes to talk. And
we're giving your time.
Get back to him. So, you know, the lieutenant governor likes to say that we shouldn't look back. We shouldn't look at the past. We should look to the future. But, you know, you're asking for a major promotion. You're asking the voters of Maryland to promote you. And we have to look at the past 8 years and your track record. And some of the things you just said didn't make any sense. I mean, you said you were making your strategic goals with respect to health care and the economy. You know, in health care, You were in charge of a failed rollout of the Affordable Care Act where you wasted $288 million of taxpayer money, where there's a federal investigation going on with subpoenas being issued for fraud and corruption. You were in charge of economic development where we've lost 8,000 businesses and 200,000 jobs. How can you say you're making your strategic goals and you're going to continue to move in the right direction? We're not moving in the right direction.
And before we head to the rebuttal, let's give Deb's question a refresh for you, sir. If you had to compare two offices, yours and that of the O'Malley administration, how would they differ?
Well, you know, first of all, it wasn't the Ehrlich-Hogan administration. I did have a role in that group, but I can't really be quite as responsible as the guy whose name is on the administration. But you know, I would go about things entirely different than this administration. I think raising 40 taxes in a row, increasing spending by $10 billion that crushed our economy and cost us 8,688 businesses, caused us to double unemployment. I mean, the fact that we've got zero economic growth and our state economy now ranks 49th out of 50 states. I would almost do everything the complete opposite of what's been happening for the next 8 years, and I think that's what the voters of Maryland want to see.
Okay, you both picked up about 2 minutes there. I'll give you 30 each to respond to each other.
Look, I think elections are about the future, not the past. If you want to look at the past, then you really ought to look at your role in the previous administration that you were a part of. Look, you appointed 10 of the 14 members of the Board of Regents, and they voted to increase tuition by 40%. Today you say that you won't support an increase in tuition, but you didn't do it then because of your loyalty to your governor. Your governor raised property taxes, okay, but you didn't come out and say, hey, don't raise property taxes. And you presided over, at least your governor did, an increase of $33 billion in taxes and fees. But you didn't come out and fight against that. But I understand why, because that's the loyalty that is expected of a senior cabinet member of an administration.
Mr. Hogan?
Well, first of all, that's just ludicrous. I have never had any role whatsoever in raising tuition, not one penny. I've always opposed every single tuition increase. In fact, I've been the leading voice of opposition to the 5 years in a row where you've increased tuition. You can't just keep repeating the same things. It doesn't matter how many times you repeat them. They're not going to make them true. I've never had any role in tuition increases, and you have.
But never during the Ehrlich administration
I had
did
no
you
role
stand up.
in making those decisions, but you're the lieutenant governor.
You don't have a role today, yet you speak out against things. You had a role then, and you did not speak out a role.
I didn't have any role in higher education and setting tuition. That's
Gentlemen, we're going to keep moving so we can get many questions in. Steve from WBOC.
Jason, thank you. The Eastern Shore needs jobs, and small businesses are the backbone of job growth. But I often hear from small business owners on the Eastern Shore that Maryland's business climate isn't very welcoming, whether it's taxes, fees, regulations. I often hear from people on the Eastern Shore say, I wish I'd opened up my business across the state line in Delaware. Others who have businesses in both states say, boy, it's a difference between the two states. So my question is, what are you going to do to address that, to improve Maryland's business climate?
Mr. Hogan, we'll let you go first this time.
Well, thank you. That's the question you just asked is really one of the primary reasons why I'm running for governor. I've been focused on this like a laser beam for the past 3.5 years. I was so frustrated with the business climate in Maryland and what was happening to our economy and losing so many jobs, not just on the Eastern Shore, but everywhere, although the shore has been impacted more than most of the rest of the state, that I started a nonpartisan grassroots citizen organization called Change Maryland. We've now grown into the largest and fastest growing nonpartisan citizen group in state history. We have 120,000 people involved. And we held 2 years in a row a business summit on improving Maryland's economic competitiveness. And we came up with, we had economists and think tanks and business leaders from all across the state to talk about this. And there's 3 basic self-inflicted wounds that were caused by my friend, the lieutenant governor, and his partner, Governor O'Malley. One, we're 42nd out of 50 states in business friendliness. We have an anti-business attitude. That's what CEO Magazine says. 2, we have an onerous, unpredictable regulatory environment that's very difficult to maneuver. It's constantly changing. People say they moved to Delaware, they moved to Virginia, they got things done much faster. And 3, we're the 5th highest tax state in the nation, and businesses make economic decisions on where to locate. So we not only are the businesses leaving, but the residents are leaving the shore and going to Delaware as well.
Let's give Mr. Brown a shot at this.
Larry, you know that Maryland's better than that. In fact, we're one of only a handful of states that has a AAA bond rating, which enables us to invest in infrastructure, which is important, like broadband to rural Maryland. We've created 16,000 jobs over the last year, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, looks at all of the small business communities and economies in the country and ranks Maryland's #1, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovation. Why is that important? Because on the Eastern Shore, there's tremendous opportunities for small businesses, as is embedded in your question. I think about the activities at Wallop, the NASA Center in Wallops Island. And I've spoken with local business leaders on the Eastern Shore that envision creating an empowerment zone where small businesses with targeted tax credits, with tax deductions for business investments in cyber, aerospace, defense communications. You don't have to be located in the vicinity of Fort Meade to create those types of jobs. You do need broadband. That's infrastructure investments. You do need an educated workforce. That's the plan that I have and the work that we've been doing to create the most competitive, highest quality workforce in the country. There's tremendous opportunities, but where Mr. Hogan and I differ is I start with tax credits, tax relief, for small and entrepreneurial businesses that create 2 out of every 3 middle-class jobs, and those jobs can be created right there on the Eastern Shore.
What do you say to that, Mr. Hogan?
Well, he says he started with small and entrepreneurial businesses and middle-class taxpayers. You did start with them with your tax policies. Your tax policies crushed them. We lost 8,688 small businesses. We've had the largest mass exodus of taxpayers fleeing our state of any state in the Mid-Atlantic region, one of the worst in the nation. 31,000 Marylanders have left. Taking with them $1.7 billion a year out of our economy. So you did start with them. You've been crushing small businesses. It is the backbone of our economy. That's why we've lost 200,000 jobs. That's what you talked about, creating 16,000, but unemployment has doubled under your administration. I mean, that's just a fact.
Lieutenant Governor?
There you go again, Larry. You know, and this is what voters don't like about politicians. And even the Baltimore Sun, they looked at all of the data and the facts that you are using in describing our economy, and they say you're misleading Marylanders.
That's just not
And you
true.
know that Maryland is stronger than that. Look, I start with tax relief for small and entrepreneurial businesses. You start with tax relief for the largest corporations that need it the least. And the businesses that we're going to grow and create on the Eastern Shore, those are going to be small entrepreneurial businesses that support projects that are happening at Wallops.
We're going to keep moving. You both had a good back and forth. Let's get to Jeff. We want to get these questions in. Jeff, go ahead.
Western Maryland is home to a significant number of commuters who drive to D.C. and to Baltimore for work. How would you prioritize money generated by the state's gas tax? Would you support widening roads, including I-270 and I-81, or would you favor more public transit projects?
Lieutenant Governor, you're up. You've got to take a balanced approach. Our transportation infrastructure includes roads, rails, the Port of Baltimore, and the airport. I supported the Transportation Infrastructure Investment Act so we can invest in all modes of transportation, because Marylanders want to spend more time either being at home with their families or being productive on the job and not stuck in traffic. So whether we're talking about moving forward with the Purple Line in the National Capital Region, or the 219-220 connector in Western Maryland, or improvements along 270, which includes the Quarter City Transit Ways, or the Dover Bridge that we just broke ground on last week on the Eastern Shore, you have to have a balanced approach to infrastructure. That's why I supported the Transportation Trust Fund, Infrastructure Investment Act, and that's why I led on public-private partnerships, so that we can find public sector not only dollars, but ingenuity to invest in our infrastructure. So it's a balanced approach.
Mr. Hogan?
Well, I don't think it has been a balanced approach. I believe that transportation has been one of the biggest failures of the Brown-O'Malley administration. First of all, you siphoned $1 billion out of the Transportation Trust Fund, money that was raised through the gas tax, that was the question, that was supposed to go towards transportation projects. And $1 billion was just siphoned out of there and poured into the general fund, which was a black hole where it just disappeared. And then when the money disappeared, then you came back and said, we have crumbling roads and bridges and the worst traffic in the nation, so we have to raise the gas tax. The little bit of money that was left in the transportation budget, I mean, you went for over a year without even having a Secretary of Transportation or a transportation plan of any kind, but 56% of the money that was left went to mass transit projects instead of roads, which is what the question is for Western Maryland. I have a completely different opinion. You've now proposed $5.3 billion in new mass transit projects for Baltimore and Washington. Meanwhile, we have drained all the money out of the road construction. We've delayed building and fixing roads for 8 years. We cut the highway user revenues to local governments by up to 96%, so we couldn't fix local and municipal, county and municipal roads. It's been an unmitigated disaster in transportation, and we have to get focused on fixing the backlog of road projects before we start talking about billions of dollars in new spending.
What do you think, sir?
There you go again. Every editorial board that has commented on the Transportation Trust Fund has debunked your characterization of the $1 billion rate of the Transportation Trust Fund. Look, the Greater Baltimore Committee supports mass transit projects like the Red Line. The Washington Board of Trade supports mass transit projects such as the Purple Line. The Maryland business community at large, writ large, supported the Transportation Infrastructure Investment Act. You didn't support that act, Larry. Now, you said the gas tax. Let's talk about the gas tax. Today, Marylanders are paying less for gas a gallon than they did, let me please finish on this, than they did a year ago. Today, Marylanders are paying less than the national average. Today, though, and more importantly, more of what Marylanders are paying at the pumps stays in Maryland, in our roads, in our mass transit, at the port, and a smaller percentage is going into the pockets of big oil companies and foreign oil-producing nations. That's significant. That is significant. That enables us to invest in roads, I agree on roads, and rail, the port, and the airport.
I heard that's not true out of you, sir, so go ahead.
Well, it's not true. I mean, first of all, nobody debunked any of these numbers. They're facts. You took $1 billion out of the Transportation Trust Fund, and everyone knows it, apparently everyone but you. We didn't build roads. That's your governor, your partner, went before the legislature and said, we have crumbling roads and bridges and the worst traffic in the nation. That's why we need to raise the gas tax. I was saying if you didn't drain the $1 billion out of the fund, we wouldn't have had to have another $1 billion increase in taxes. That's the difference.
All right. Deb?
Mr. Hogan, you have said if elected, you could work well with the Democratic legislature. What kind of issue and/or legislation do you honestly believe you could get past them?
Well, it's a great question. I hear that question all the time. First of all, the day after my election on November 4, I'm going to pick up the phone, and the first two people I'm going to talk to are President of the Senate, Mike Miller, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Bush. And we're going to work as closely as we can with the legislature to try to work together to get things done. My entire life has been about bipartisanship. I told you earlier I started the largest nonpartisan citizen organization in state history. I have a long history of working together with those folks across the aisle. I believe that we need to sit down together and reach across the aisle and come up with real common sense bipartisan solutions. And I believe that when I'm elected in just a few weeks, that it's going to send a loud and clear message to those politicians in Annapolis that we've got to work together on behalf of the state, and I think we're going to find many ways to cooperate. I believe that my whole entire life has been about bringing parties together, and I think we can do it. We're going to work very hard to work in conjunction with the Democrats and people in both parties. Specific legislation that you could get past them, or a specific issue? I think we're going to get a lot of legislation. I mean, I believe that first of all, we're going to cut spending. This administration has increased spending by $10 billion, by 36%. I can cut that spending without the legislature, and we're going to do it. But then we got to work with the legislature on the tax relief. They've got to go along with that. And that's what I'm going to focus on. The lieutenant governor likes to say that I only care about tax relief for the richest, a handful of the richest corporations. You've actually given $544 million last year in corporate giveaways to a handful of the richest corporations. I'm not in favor of that whatsoever. My entire past 3.5 years have been talking about bringing tax relief for struggling Maryland families. 38 of the 40 tax increases were regressive taxes that hurt people at the lower end of the scale the worst. And that's what I'm going to focus on trying to get through with the legislature. They can't keep taxing people to death. I'm going to convince them.
I'm sorry, sir. We'll give you a shot at both of those. One, working together, and also I think you want to respond.
Sure. Look, I think Maryland deserves a governor who's going to be proactively working with the General Assembly. And I've got 16 years of experience with presiding officers, members of the General Assembly. They want a governor who's going to be proactive and not defensive. You were just quoted yesterday as saying that you're going to be a lot like a goalie in Annapolis. Goalies play defense. And you can't play defense and be an effective governor. You've got to proactively work for a realistic savings plan. Now, your savings plan, Larry, includes $450 million of cuts to school construction. You've been given an opportunity to clarify that, and you haven't. Your so-called savings plan includes expanding the property tax base by $300 million. You can't play defense in Annapolis. We've got a $1.75 billion savings plan that builds on the savings that we've achieved over the last several years, looks at strategic resourcing, looking at collective purchasing agreements with state and county government. I'm going to be proactive on the offensive with the General Assembly, with whom I have a great relationship. You can't play defense in this game.
Lieutenant Governor, if I know Deb, she's probably wondering, her question was specific legislation. If there's something that you can get through with both sides working together, if you had something specific, what would it be?
Sure. What we're going to do in our first legislative session, and we'll have a number of items, but we're going to continue to move forward on the expansion of early childhood education, pre-K. We're going to deliver more career technology education into our classrooms. And we are going to have, unlike the $450 million cut to school construction, we're going to have a robust school construction program where we're not raising taxes. We do it within debt affordability. We don't jeopardize our AAA bond rating, and we invest more in schools. Those are some of the specific things that I'll be working on with the General Assembly.
Let's do a couple of 30s here. Mr. Hogan, go ahead.
Well, first of all, almost everything that he just said isn't true. Several newspaper accounts, even one today, was just debunking this entire phony argument of yours that I'm going to cut school construction. I'm not going to cut school construction by 1 penny. I can assure you of that. So you've been running around the state saying it over and over, but nobody in the media and nobody in the general public believes you. Here's the thing. Yeah, and I did say I'm going to have to try to play defense because you know what? The people in Maryland are really tired of a monopoly where you can pretty much just do anything you want with no checks and balances. They're looking for real bipartisan common sense solutions, and they're looking for people to come together and work between the parties, because when you have a monopoly, it could be either party, but it happens to be all Democrats here in Maryland, you end up with cronyism, corruption, and bad government. And I think they're looking for balance, and that's why I'm running for governor.
Sir?
Look, the only cronyism that we've really seen in Annapolis was when you were under subpoena investigation, because as the appointments secretary in the previous administration, you were accused of, you were investigated and subpoenaed for hiring state government employees simply because of party affiliation. That's not making progress in Annapolis. That's not partnering with the General Assembly. That's not the kind of proactive leadership that Marylanders deserve.
So I have to respond to that. I'm sorry, but that was just complete nonsense. So I was credited with appointing the most bipartisan, most inclusive, and most diverse administration in Maryland history. There was a partisan witch hunt that was done by a few Democrats in the legislature, which didn't find a single thing. They made those accusations, but we were completely, they never found one single wrongful termination. But you said you don't like to talk about the past. Why do we have to go back 12 years to something that was found to be discredited? There is a current federal probe into criminal activities and possible fraud on the healthcare website that you are in charge of. And you want to go back and talk about something that was already dismissed 12 years ago?
You know that's not true.
No, it is true.
No, it isn't. The only talk of a criminal probe is from you during the last 30 days of this campaign.
There are subpoenas that have been issued to find out about the fraud involved in the wasting of $288 million on the website that you're in charge of.
Voters grow tired.
Gentlemen, we're going to keep going.
They're tired of it. They're tired of you wasting the money.
Let's keep going, and we'll keep this regional debate going, and we're going to head to the Eastern Shore with Steve.
We're going to keep going on a similar topic. Mr. Brown, you were in charge of rolling out Maryland's healthcare exchange. It was plagued with problems. Specifically, what was your role before the launch? What was your role after the launch? And do you accept responsibility for some of the problems?
Sure. Like I've said on a number of occasions, everyone involved with setting up the Health Benefits Exchange had a responsibility, and that included me. I presided over the Health Reform Coordinating Council, where we created a Health Benefits Exchange, an independent organization. We focused on expansion of the Medicaid program, the safety net program, making sure we have providers in Maryland, a number of issues dealing with health reform. Look, Maryland, like every state in the federal government, we had technical difficulties with our launch. And that's why my post-launch role got in closer. We moved in. We said to the board at the exchange, we're moving in. We refocused the vendors, got rid of some of them that weren't performing under their contracts with the state. We refocused the project leadership. We plussed up call centers around the state, and as a result, we enrolled over 400,000 Marylanders with health insurance. These are families who were priced out of the market a year ago, perhaps because a family member had a pre-existing condition. These are families that can now cover their kids up to age 26. These are women now who are enrolling through the exchange that aren't paying more for premiums because they're women. So we did what Marylanders expected us to do, which is when you have adversity or challenges, you don't run away. You don't join those on the sidelines who are rooting for failure. But what you do is you roll up your sleeves and you get it done. We are now well on our way to a seamless second open enrollment, which begins in mid-November, so that we will continue to enroll more and more Marylanders in the health exchange.
Lieutenant Governor, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
So you were involved in these meetings where decisions were made as to which vendor was going to be chosen and everything was vetted?
No. As I said, I preside over the Health Reform Coordinating Council. The legislature created an independent body. It's much like the Public Service Commission or the Maryland Insurance Administration, where you have an independent board that selects the executive director. They have given responsibility to do the procurements, staff selection, and the like.
Got it.
So the procurement was done at the board, and then it went to the Board of Public Works.
Mr. Hogan, what, if any, changes would you make to the current healthcare exchange in Maryland?
Well, first of all, I'd like to address some of the comments that the Lieutenant Governor just made. He seems like he's proud of the rollout. He says that they got things done, they plussed up, they moved forward. This has been an unmitigated disaster. We're not like other states. We were the worst in the entire country. We're the first state to abandon our entire system. You've wasted $288 million of taxpayers' money. It's being investigated by the feds right now. How can you say, oh, we're proud, we rolled up our sleeves, we got it done, we did this? You didn't. You lost $288 million as people lost their health care coverage. You did not earn a promotion based on your performance there. And you talk about, I'm rooting for failure. You know, if I was rooting for failure, I would just let you be governor. I care about this state. I'm very concerned about these issues. That's why I'm out here doing this. I'm not rooting for failure. I'm trying to turn the state around.
What's your answer to the question?
Here's what I've called for. I was trying to address all the inaccuracies in your two soliloquies there.
Okay.
So here's what we would have done different. Back in October, this thing collapsed on the very first day. We immediately called for stopping spending money because they were obviously incompetent and unable to roll it out. They continue to throw good money after bad. We said we should go to the federal system rather than the failed state system. We then said we shouldn't waste money renting a system from Connecticut. Look, our next door neighbor, Virginia, where many of our former Maryland businesses, jobs, and taxpayers now reside, they did just the opposite of what we did here in Maryland. They say we have great private sector exchanges in Virginia, and you can take advantage of the Affordable Care Act by going on the federal site. That's what we should have done rather than wasting $288 million.
All right. Thank you. So do you want your 30?
Absolutely. If you knew anything about the exchange, you know that by going to the federal exchange, it would have cost Marylanders actually more money because our Medicaid system isn't compatible with the federal exchange. But that's not something you're familiar with. Look, the disappointing thing about this election and the conversation around health care is we're always talking about the health benefits exchange. And I've accepted responsibility for that, and we're going to have a seamless open enrollment. What we ought to be talking about is what's the next step in delivering quality of care. And what the Washington Post called the most innovative reform in health care in decades. And that's what we're doing in Maryland with our global payment systems with hospitals, having hospitals incentivized to deliver better care, quality care at a lower cost. These are the things that are part of health reform as well. Tend to focus a lot on the health benefits exchange. There's a lot of good things going on in Maryland.
Well, we're focused on it because it's the biggest boondoggle in state history, and taxpayers are very concerned about it. That's why we're focused. I mean, it wasn't really a success. It was the biggest failure in the nation, and you still have yet to admit it.
411,000 Marylanders enrolled.
You know, those were just automatic rollovers of Medicaid that had nothing to do with the new system. Medicaid's been around for a long time without having this new failed website to sign them up.
We're going to push on to Jeff. Jeff, this is our last question that we'll have rebuttals on, and then we'll try to get some quick fire questions in as we get close to the end here. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan, you said previously that one of the biggest crime-related issues in Maryland is the growing heroin epidemic. Now, this is an especially big problem in Western Maryland. If elected governor, how would you specifically address the issue on a local and a state level? And do you feel the state has failed to adequately address this problem?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. And as I've been around the state, I was shocked to hear how bad this problem was. Every county, I've been to all 23 counties multiple times, and I've sat down with, healthcare providers and addictions counselors and first responders and police officers and state's attorneys and toured jails and met with folks to talk about this issue. And I was in Hagerstown, for example, when I talked with the state's attorney who said the #1 issue in Hagerstown is heroin. And that came as a surprise to me. And then I went to St. Mary's County and talked to the sheriff down there. He said 60% of their problems are caused by heroin. I was in Caroline County on the shore when I said, what's the #1 issue or problem you're facing with here in your county? And I wasn't even talking about crime. And they said, our #1, this is a very rural county that said our #1 issue is heroin. We have a heroin epidemic here in Maryland. We've been called the heroin capital of the United States. We're being infiltrated with gangs. 60 or 70% of the people in the Frederick County jail are gang-related and heroin-related. It's a major disaster. We're the heroin capital of the United States. We're the only state on the East Coast that has not declared a state of emergency over this very serious problem. In January, I will immediately declare a state of emergency and call a summit together to bring all of the various components together, sit around the table to figure out how we attack this problem. It's a major, major issue.
Lieutenant Governor.
Sure, thank you. Jeff, in June, we sat down with local government officials from rural communities and throughout Maryland to talk about and to devise a plan for addressing heroin, the proliferation of heroin that's showing up, particularly in our rural communities, although not limited to our rural communities. So we've done a number of things. One is we stepped up the Maryland State Police on their interdiction of large quantities moving through the state. Number two is we're reinforcing local law enforcement strategies. A governor doesn't come into local communities and says what their strategies are. So we're reinforcing that. Maryland State Police that are on the ground with local police, better training, also identification of what a heroin overdose looks like, and given the tools and the medication to help prevent that. But the other thing, and this is why I supported the decriminalization of possession of small amounts of marijuana. It'll save our state about $100 million a year in prosecuting those. We can take those funds and do better drug treatment and addiction counseling and treatment and education and outreach, particularly to our younger populations, so that they stay away from heroin and other dangerous substances.
Okay, we're going to keep moving. We'll go to Deb. We're going to try to do no rebuttals here and ask you to stick to your time. Deb.
Lieutenant Governor, if elected, you would become the first African-American governor in the state's history. Does race matter in this race?
I understand the significance of race and certainly the historical significance of being elected Maryland's governor. I'll be only the first African-American elected governor in the history of this state, and only the third in the history of this nation. I think where race has more significance is when we look at, for example, education, and the question was raised about the achievement gap. We have an achievement gap along racial lines, and that's why I support universal pre-K to help close that achievement gap. We talked a little bit about health care, but I wish we would have talked more broadly about health reform because we know that we have health disparities by both race, ethnicity, and geography. That's why I led the effort to create health enterprise zones to address those disparities so we can eliminate differences in outcomes along racial lines. So I think race is important to the extent that the quality of life goals that we achieve ought to be experienced uniformly by all Marylanders, regardless of where your family lives, where they're from, race, ethnicity, or nationality.
Mr. Hogan, same question to you.
Well, I don't know about you at home, but I have no idea what he just said. The question was, look, I don't think race has any part whatsoever in this race for governor, and the people I talk to around the state don't really care if the next governor is going to be white or black or Asian or Hispanic. They're looking for somebody that's going to turn the state around. They don't want to go in the same direction. They're looking to move Maryland forward rather than continuing to move backwards. And I don't think it should be an issue, and I don't think it is an issue. You know, my wife would be the first Asian first lady in Maryland history, and that shouldn't be an issue either.
Steve Hammond.
All right. Most people, I think, in the state of Maryland would agree that this has been a pretty nasty, pretty negative race. And I've heard the word lies used occasionally in the campaign, and here's your chance to set the record straight. My question is, what's the most offensive, most egregious misperception or lie that your opponent has said about you, and what's the truth?
Mr. Hogan,
well, it's really hard to narrow it down. You know, my opponent's campaign has been called the most dishonest and most negative in the entire country. I called it the worst I've ever seen in my entire life. He's run, I think, 10 attack ads, you know, $16 million of special interest money in running some of the most hateful, most disgusting television ads that have ever been run. And it's really hurt his campaign. It's caused us to help close the gap because people are tired of politicians and they're tired of politics and they don't like this kind of negative campaigning. We've run a very positive campaign. All of our commercials are positive, and I think people are responding to our positive vision for the future. But every single word in every single commercial that the Lieutenant Governor has run is absolutely false. And it's not worth repeating them all here because they're just completely false and they have no business in politics. I mean, he says that I want to take away a woman's right to choose even in the cases of rape and incest. It's absolutely false. I'm going to change nothing with respect to reproductive rights. I've said it over and over and over again. He says I want to put assault weapons in the schoolyards and put them in the shopping carts, and that's absolutely false. He says I'm going to take money away from rich corporations, take money away from school kids and give it to rich corporations. Every ad is completely false, and I've said we're not going to change any of these issues. Those have never been my positions, and he's been roundly criticized by liberal commentators across the country and from the Baltimore Sun and from other places about the blatant falsehoods, and people are not responding well to it. And I think it's one of the reasons why they're looking to go in a different direction.
Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, look, I don't focus a whole lot on the ads that Mr. Hogan is running. I do know that campaigns are a conversation that we have with voters. And wherever I travel in Maryland, a lot of issues come up, and it's not for candidates to say what is an issue important in the campaign and what isn't. I travel, for example, around the state. Voters say, hey, where are you on the Firearms Safety Act? It was passed a year ago. We're already starting to see reductions in gun-related crimes. Mr. Hogan opposed Senate Bill 281. Senate Bill 281 would have taken assault weapons off the streets, high-capacity magazines off the street, and required common sense background checks. I supported it. It passed. You opposed it. Senate Bill 281 also would authorize mental health records be made available to state and local law enforcement. Senate Bill 281 also restricts a category of Marylanders with mental illness from getting guns. And Mr. Hogan opposed that. Now, he's not going to tell Marylanders that he opposed it, but certainly that's part of the conversation. You oppose Senate Bill 281, which makes streets safer, and Marylanders ought to know about that. So what part of that is a lie?
I don't think he understood the question. Look,
I don't want to characterize your commercials. I'm talking about the ads that we're putting on,
my
Larry.
commercials are great. Here's what my commercials focus on. They focus on what Marylanders are focused on.
But what you're not focusing on is
my time now.
You flip-flopped on the minimum wage.
It's my turn.
You flip-flop on the minimum wage.
Hey, let's not interrupt, okay?
On gun
I realize
control.
you're Lieutenant Governor, but it's my turn to talk now.
On college affordability. I mean, come on.
Okay, let's
Gentlemen,
give me a
we could
shot
do this
here.
all day. Let's give Jeff his shot. We'll just going to keep it. We'll keep it
I'd
going.
like to at least respond to some of that.
I tell you what.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
No, we'll give you about 30. We'll give you 30 on this, Jeff. We're going to get to you. I promise.
Look, here's what Marylanders are focused on. Marylanders are focused on the fact that we've raised taxes 40 times in a row, that we've lost 200,000 jobs, the fact that we've lost 8,000 businesses. They're concerned about the fact that we've had zero economic growth, that our state economy ranks 49th out of 50 states. That's what I've focused on like a laser beam for 3.5 years. They're not concerned about any of these crazy issues that you're trying to distract voters with because you cannot defend your 8-year record of failure. You did not deserve a promotion, okay? We've had lost businesses, lost jobs, higher spending, record tax increases, and broken promises. That's what Marylanders are concerned about.
All right, I'll hold you to the 30, Lieutenant Governor.
Yep. Marylanders care about gun safety. You oppose gun safety legislation. Marylanders won. I think about that 33-year-old woman in Dundalk raising one child, making minimum wage. We voted to raise that. You voted against. You opposed it. I know you didn't vote. You weren't in the legislature. You opposed it. College tuition, you jacked it up 40%. We've made it much more affordable. Marylanders ought to know about that.
We already heard all the commercials.
Well, these are important
They're all
issues.
false.
Gentlemen,
These
let's
are
do
important
this. Let's
issues.
get to Jeff. We'll give you 30 seconds to answer this question. We only have about 4 minutes left in the show. Jeff?
There has been renewed discussion among some lawmakers and voters in Western Maryland about creating a new state consisting of Carroll, Frederick, Washington, Allegheny, and Garrett counties. It's unlikely anything like that would ever happen, but it does illustrate the divide in the state. How would you bring the state together?
Gentlemen, 30 seconds.
Me first? Well, first of all, I don't think we should be having any part of the state secede, but it's an indication of the problem and the concern that I hear everywhere I go. It's not only in Western Maryland or the Eastern Shore, it's Southern Maryland. People feel a huge disconnect between Annapolis and the rest of Maryland, and they feel as if their concerns are being neglected and ignored, and they don't like the direction the state is heading, which is why they're so concerned, and it's quite frankly why we have such a competitive race for governor. But I want to make Maryland a better place so that we can keep everybody together and make it one Maryland everybody can be proud of.
Mr. Brown.
Yep, I believe one Maryland, regional strategies. Western Maryland has a regional strategy and county plans. Look, when I travel around the state of Maryland, whether I'm in Oakland, whether I'm in Cumberland, whether I'm in Frostburg, Hagerstown, Frederickstown, families want the same thing. They want to know that there's a governor fighting for them, whether it's expanding pre-K. In fact, there's a greater need for pre-K education in Western Maryland than there is in Baltimore City because of the unmet needs in Western Maryland. When my running mate's out there fighting to expand broadband in rural Maryland, that's the highway of this innovation economy. That's going to be a tremendous benefit to Western Maryland.
Sir,
so you need a governor, we need a governor that's going to govern for all of Maryland.
Sir, I apologize. We're going to get to your final statements now. I'm going to push it a little ahead here. As we discussed earlier, we tossed the coin up earlier. Mr. Hogan, you'll get a shot at closing statements. First, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The decision that we make in this election will have a lasting impact on the future of our state. It breaks my heart that nearly half of all Marylanders want to leave our state. Boyd Rutherford and I want to make Maryland a place we can all be proud of, a place where a young person could start a career, where you can be able to raise a family, where you can afford to retire. The state is way off track and heading in the wrong direction. We want to turn things around. I'm running for governor because I believe that the average Marylander is fed up with politics as usual. With your help, on November 4, we can send a loud and clear message to the politicians in Annapolis, and together we can change Maryland for the better. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. I believe firmly that every Marylander should be able to pursue and achieve the American dream. The idea that if you work hard, play by the rules, sacrifice from time to time, you should be able to achieve your dreams. My family came to this country 6 decades ago. My father, out of poverty in Kingston, Jamaica. He was able to provide for his family and make a difference in our community because of the college education that he receives. Every day, Ken Ullman and I will get up with Marylanders fighting for working families and middle-class values. That's why we'll invest in quality, affordable pre-K and career technology education. That's why we'll fight every day to keep guns off our streets and ensure that every Marylander can raise their family in a safe neighborhood. We'll see the minimum wage implemented in Maryland, and we'll respect the dignity of every Marylander. Ken Ullman and I need you not just on November 4th, and I ask tonight for your vote. Ken Ullman and I need you for the next 4 years as together we build a better Maryland for more Marylanders.
All right. I want to thank our candidates, Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown and Mr. Larry Hogan as well, for spending this time with us and sharing their vision for leading Maryland. And thanks to all of you who are watching or listening to this debate. We hope that when you head to the polls on November 4th, that this debate has given you the answers that you need to pick the next governor of Maryland. I'm Jason Newton for all of us at WBAL, WBOC, WHAG, Maryland Public Television. Good night, everybody.
Programs on MPT are made possible by our members and the following.
Since 1865, the Maryland State Education Association has supported public education, school funding, small class sizes, and our students. Visit MarylandEducators.org and join us in standing up for strong public schools.
You're watching member-supported Maryland Public Television.
Tonight on MPT.
Next time on DCI Banks.
They came to my door and said they were social workers.
An 11-year-old boy is abducted.
14 hours missing and counting.
When drugs are discovered.
Half a kilo of heroin. There's only you and Carl in the house.
The case takes a bizarre turn.
Carl's got a gambling habit. What, so the heroin's Carl's?
And the